Hey guys, I'm here. Welcome. I hope some people are popping in. It is Tuesday and I am doing my video about writing. So the video today is just going to be like a little intro to how I start writing right now in Maternelle. And then I was thinking to kind of like show you the progress of where my students are going to go. Maybe I'll check in like maybe once a month even if I can fit into my schedule, or once every 2 months, and kind of show you like how teaching writing this way like really helps your students go far. So I'm gonna get started right away. If you missed the beginning, that's okay. You can always watch the replay. If you're watching the replay, thank you, and I'm happy to have you here. So I had actually forgotten half of my writing samples at school today, and I just ran to school, like I realized at 7:15, and I only live 10 minutes from school, luckily, but I jumped in my car and like drove to school. Because so now we've done writing for 2 days. We started yesterday, and then I brought all those samples home yesterday, and then today when we did it, I left them on my desk. So I got them, we're good. I'm not even super late. So I will jump in right away because I'm also really tired and I want to go to bed at like 9 o'clock. So I'm going to try to get through this pretty quickly. So the main reason that I'm doing this video is because I love teaching writing. It is my favorite thing ever to teach. Like I find it just magical. It's like from where they start in the beginning of Maternelle to where they end up in June. I love it. But a lot of teachers tell me that their students in Maternelle can't write, or that they don't write, even in Maternelle, like they have such a hard time getting them to write. Their students don't want to, like they can't do it. They don't have vocabulary. They don't have letter sounds. They don't have. So what I find is not that students can't write. The problem is more like with us teachers and what we think writing is and what we think writing is supposed to look like. So like when we think of writing, we think that it looks like, you know, formed letters that you can read with words and spaces in between them and capitals and lowercase and punctuation and like all of that all in a row, like really nicely writing. And like that is definitely like the end goal for sure. But essentially, like boiled down, when it comes down to it, writing is just telling on paper. So it's just telling something on paper. It might be telling a story on paper. It might be telling something that happened to you on paper. It might be telling you how to do something like a recipe or like a marche à suivre. It might be telling you like a list of something. It's just writing is just telling on paper, and our students can all tell us things on paper. So we're gonna start, like I started yesterday with writing. It does not look like writing yet. Like you'll see when I show you today, it doesn't look like writing yet, but it is telling on paper, and we're gonna keep going with that. So before I show you my samples from yesterday, I just wanted to kind of tell you a bit about like my philosophies of writing and why, like what my number one goal is. So for me, my number one goal is to just have my students love writing. So the reason why I want them to love writing is because it's way easier and more enjoyable to do things that you love and enjoy. So if I can get them to love writing, it's more likely that they're going to learn like the mechanics of writing and like enjoy it, because the more that you write and the more that you practice, the better you're going to get at it. So I want my students to love writing to the point where they're like writing all the time, even on their own time. So I think that like obviously we're all different and we all teach in different ways. If you disagree with what I say today, that's totally fine. Like, do you? Just because I believe in something doesn't mean that you have to. And like our number one goal might be different. Like you might have like stricter outcomes or stricter principles or like whatever that say, nope, the writing has to look like this. So like just as always, think of me like Walmart. Take what you need, take what you like, and leave the rest. That's totally fine. So for me, like the number one goal of writing, like for my students, is I want them to enjoy it. And what I want to get out of them is for them to communicate. So, and I find in Maternelle, like what my students want to communicate the most is stories. So like they want to tell me everything all the time, like madame, 100 things to tell me, 100,000 things to tell me, maybe. And most of their stories in Maternelle are about like themselves, because the self is so important at this age, like developmentally. They're still like pretty egocentric and thinking with themselves. If you're in Première, of course, it like expands to their family, and then in grade 2, it expands to their community. So you can go a little bit farther with that. But in Maternelle, what they know best is themselves and like what has happened to them, and that is generally what they want to share about. So to teach them the mechanics of writing, I do what I always do, and I start with what they know. And since I know that my students love to tell me like 100,000 million billion stories per day, I use that knowledge to kind of encourage them to fall in love with writing from the get-go and to see the value of it. So how I like get my students excited about writing is the very first day. So yesterday, I explained to them how like sometimes I'm really sad in my heart because they all have so many great stories that they want to tell me and that I want to hear, but I only have 2 ears and like there's, you know, like 20 of them. This year I only have 15. It's a special year, a magical year for me. But usually I have 20 of them. And there's so much we have to do every day, so I can't always listen to all their stories even though I want to. But I have like a great solution to that problem. And the solution is they can tell me stories on paper. And when they tell me their stories on paper, they don't forget to tell me. I can read them anytime. Like it's okay if we're doing something else later. Like I can take them home to my house and read them. Like it's amazing. Telling stories on paper is the best thing ever because that allows me to like really hear and see their stories. So that's how I sell my students on the idea that writing is amazing, is that they can write down their stories and ideas and then people can like understand them later on, even if they're not exactly in the room with me at the time. So my writing block always has the same structure. We do like 3 parts. So that we always start with a mini lesson, then we do a practice, and then we do a share. So in the mini lesson, you can probably guess, I model something that I want them to try. So I always model writing a story that is pertinent to me and my life. Like I never ever do writing from a prompt. Like we never do like voici and whatever, like I don't do that. Writing from a prompt definitely has a time and a place. I think sometimes the grade 1 teacher is annoyed with me because she gets them to write from prompts and like my students that go to her are like, no, I just want to write my own thing. So definitely there are times that are important to write from a prompt, especially like in grade 1 and 2. So I'm not suggesting that you never write from a prompt, but like for my writer's workshop where I'm really teaching them how to write, we do not write from a prompt. So I don't model writing from a prompt. I model telling a story that is about me and my life, and that is something that I want them to know about me. So while I'm modeling that, I show them something new each time they can try in their writing, or I review something that I've already taught, but they're not quite getting yet. So like spaces, for example, take like 8 million, 8 million lessons in Maternelle. So yeah, I either teach them something new or we review something else that they need more practice with. After the mini lesson, we do a practice. So my students are invited to practice what I've showed them. And when I'm modeling, like writing a story, I'm showing them like 800 things. I'm showing them the writing process. I'm showing them adding details to their drawing. I'm showing them spaces between words, capitals, lower cases, punctuation. Like I'm showing them so many things. They might not practice all of the things that I'm showing them. That's fine. Like wherever their brains are at is what they're going to do. So what I love about writing and writing in a workshop model is that it's differentiated already. So like you'll even see in my samples today, like you'll be able to tell which students are like avancé and then which students are going to need more support to get there. But they all spent the same amount of time writing and they all had the same lesson. Just when their brains are ready, like I show them and I show them and I show them and I show them, when their brains are ready, then they'll start doing it on their own. So what's important to me is that they understand the process, the writing process, and then when their brains are ready, they add in little pieces as we go that are developmental appropriate for them. So if it makes sense for them to add to their piece what I've showed, they can practice it. If not, that's fine. Like they're always invited to try it out, but they don't always try it out. But as long as they're writing, like that's cool. So like I always make sure my students know like you're the author. Like if I take a lesson to show them how to write their title in like big bold letters with colors and maybe that doesn't work for their piece. Like maybe they're not writing a book that day, so they're not going to try that out. Like that's fine. They're the author. They know if it fits their piece. Like I trust them. Usually they do want to try it, but like they're the author, so it's up to them. And then after the practice, we always do a share. So to me, the point of writing stories is pretty much always to share them. Obviously, personal journals would be an exception. They're just for the writer, but like especially in Maternelle and Première Année, Deuxième Année, like in general, authors write with the goal of sharing. So we always have a share at the end of our writing book. Shoot. Okay, so the mini lesson, I'm just going to kind of go into bigger detail of each chunk of our block. So as I said already, the mini lesson is when I'm showing them something new. That's when I cover like basically all of my writing outcomes. I have mini lessons that kind of cover every single one throughout the whole year. So I showed them exactly like how to write, and I modeled the exact same writing process every single day, starting on day 1, which was yesterday. So for me, my writing process has 3 parts. If you're in like an older grade, you're gonna probably add like revision and I do a revision mini lesson like every couple of weeks when we pick like one piece to share like more publicly, like I might display it, we might invite another class in or whatever. So like I would do a revision mini lesson maybe at the end of each month, and it's really like it's a big challenge for them to do that, like that's fine, we're just practicing. But if you're like in grade 2, you might want to add kind of a revision piece here to my writing process. So for me, the step 1 is to just think of an idea. Step 2 for me is to draw a picture. And then step 3 is adding words and symbols to clarify my message. Also, if you're in grade 2, even like later grade 1, you might not want to do the picture first. Like I know I've heard other teachers say, if they do the picture first and they don't have time to write actual words and they don't add them. In Maternelle, I think it's really, really important to start with the picture, because that's what tells them what they're writing about. Like that's where they draw their ideas from. So I do recommend absolutely in Maternelle and the start of grade 1, even like maybe till Christmas, maybe till March break, maybe the whole year, start with a picture and then they add the words. But if you're in grade 2 and your students are writing, like they could probably start with the words to get their story, like because they can hold the idea in their heads better, whereas developmentally, like in Maternelle and Primaria, like it's harder for them to hold their idea in their head. So it helps them to draw it first and then they're better able to write. So part 1 is think of an idea, and I make like a really big show of like thinking really hard, like what's something cool or funny or interesting that happened to me that I want everybody to know about. Generally my story is about like my dog or my daughter, because they're really into stories about my dog and my daughter. So especially when Leah was a baby, like they were so into like the silliest things that she did, like throwing yogurt or whatever. So like I try to think of something that is going to entertain them. On day 1, though, I usually draw a picture of my family, because it's something that's really easy for your students to relate to. Like everybody has some kind of a family, hopefully. So if your students aren't confident enough on day 1 to like do their own thing, that's fine. Like they'll probably just draw their own family, which is like great. It's different enough from your family. Like you don't have the same family, so they're still like adding their own kind of spin on it. But yeah, it kind of gives them a good jumping off point that they can all relate to, and something that they all like generally love. So yesterday I had planned to draw a picture of my family. My students only had enough stamina for me to draw Leah, so I only drew Leah. I didn't bring my picture with me. I forgot to grab that when I went back to school, but it's just like a picture of her. So I like thought of an idea and I was like, oh, I want all of you guys to know that I have a little girl and her name is Leah. So like that was my idea. And then I like drew her, and as I was drawing, I was like talking to them. So I'm like, oh, like she's pretty small, like she's only 2 years old. So like I'm not gonna draw her very tall on my page. And like I drew her head, and I'm like, well, she has blonde hair. I don't really have a blonde crayon, but yellow's pretty close. So like I'm gonna pick that so that you know, like if you see a bunch of kids someday and you see one with blonde hair, like it might be Leah. I'm like, well, her favorite color is yellow, so I'm going to draw her with a yellow shirt, yada, yada, yada. So like just kind of, and then like I was like, I want you to know she's 2 years old, so I drew a 2. So that's kind of like showing them that symbols are fine, like symbols count. It clarified my message. I wanted them to know she was 2, so I drew a number 2. And then I was like, guys, like she's my daughter. Like I picked her name, so obviously like I know how to write her name because she's my daughter. Like if you know how to write your name, you can write your name. If you don't, like that's fine, just write what you know. So I was like, I wrote her name, and then like that was that. So then I send them off. Yeah, so what I really want during writing is that they're telling a real story of something that's really true for them. But on day 1, like I don't really talk about that yet, because like it takes all their stamina just to like learn the process of the 3 steps of writing. So thinking of an idea, drawing your picture, adding your words and symbols to clarify your message. So like I didn't tell them I want you to tell a real, like I said like it would be nice to hear a real story, but like I didn't make a big deal about it. So like you'll see in my samples, like some of them drew, like one of them drew like an owl, one of them drew Pikachu. Like obviously those aren't real stories, but like I can't be frustrated with them about that yet, because I didn't teach them that yet. I can't be frustrated about their volume level yet, because we didn't do a mini lesson on volume level. I can't be frustrated if they walk around the classroom. We didn't do a message about like staying in one spot. So like I can redirect them if they're doing something that's like off task, but like I can't get mad about anything. Like I can't get mad if they don't add, like if their character's floating in the sky. Like we didn't talk about adding grass, like you know what I mean? Like I can't expect things of them that I haven't taught them yet. All I have taught them is think of an idea, draw a picture, add some symbols and letters that you know, and like you're done. So it can be kind of painful and slow, especially in Maternelle, like where they have no experience at all. Like you have to be really patient, but every single day you're going to teach them something new, and then you can bring them really, really far. So if you're teaching like grade 1 or 2 and your students have some experience, you probably like can it's probably not going to go as slow for you. So like that's great news. But even still, like you can't expect them to know something that you haven't taught them yet. So I will show you like some of our first day ones. So what I do is I set the timer. On day one, I set it for 5 minutes. And then I say like, okay, you're just going to write until the red, like I have a time timer. So it has like a red circle. So you're just going to keep working until the red circle is gone. And then like, we'll be done. If you're not done, it's okay. So like a lot of them, you'll see like they're not finished. One little girl like really wanted to finish. So during free play, I did let her color it in. But generally like we don't go back to our writing things. But anyway, so you can see that like this does not look like writing. So like this was an owl somebody drew on day one. So they only had 5 minutes and then they were done. Another owl, because they both had, like when one kid said they were drawing an owl, the other kid was like, I'm drawing an owl. I can't be mad about that. I didn't tell them yet that it has to be unique and personal. So like, it is what it is. This one, so when I was drawing my picture, I was kind of like, oh, I'm gonna like start with a pencil because if I make a mistake, it's no big deal. I can just erase it. So this student was like really into the eraser and they were really like learning about using the eraser. So they didn't get very far. That's fine. It's day one. The worse their day one work is, like the more progress they're gonna make by the end of the year. So this one drew some people. She didn't add any labels. Like that's fine. This student actually, I had him last year. Like I retained him and he's here with me again. So he kind of already knew my process, but he drew a dinosaur. So like on my alphabet, I have a dinosaur and he knows that like, if they need to use a letter, I'll get it down for them and they can see it if they need a word by word, whatever. So like he asked for me to get him the D for dinosaur and he drew like a D's. I think they're upside down maybe. I don't know. He drew D's for his dinosaur. And then on the back, he drew an igloo. And this is him. Okay, sorry, my screen's like all backwards. This is him going into the igloo and he made some letter I's that were on the igloo alphabet. So like he already kind of knows, like he's like obviously not ahead of the game as far as like fine motor skills goes and letter sounds, but like he knows the process. So that was cool. He learned something from me last year, even though I didn't know if he had learned anything at all. So this one, she like filled up her page quite a bit. I think she would have gotten more done if she would have had more time. This girl is definitely an artist. Like she's gonna be loving writing. So you'll see like most people, so this one was really interesting. He didn't start with a pencil as I had asked, but like again, I didn't do a whole lesson on starting with a pencil yet. So like that's fine. You can start with a crayon. It is what it is. His name starts with a P. So he drew a P here. Sorry. And then his brother's name starts with an R. And coincidentally, we did the letter R yesterday. So we had been talking about how his brother starts with an R. So he drew an R for his brother. So like, here's my student. His brother is there, his mom and his dad, but like he didn't know those sounds, so that's fine. Like he doesn't put them. He doesn't know them, so he doesn't put them. Like, that's cool. We'll keep working on it. This one, so she wanted to draw, so her friend, her cousin, just got a new baby brother, I think. So her cousin is 4, she's in the pre-primary program, and she just got a new baby. So I'm sorry, it's really backwards for me. So that's her mom in the house with the baby, and like she's going to visit the baby. So the drawing does not look like fancy like drawing, it doesn't look like writing, but she told me like a real story. Like it's a real story about her cousin, her brand new baby cousin. So that's amazing. Like that's amazing. She's already telling me a story. I can teach her how to like add the words and add the colors and yada, yada, yada all year long. But she has an idea. Like that's huge. It's huge. This is the guy that drew Pikachu, but guess what? He knew that Pikachu starts with P. So that's awesome. I can tell already he knows some letter sounds. And then this is the one that begged me to let her finish and add more details during free play. So she had just done the pencil part during the writing block, and then she came back during free play and colored it in. Usually I don't do that, but like she was really upset and she didn't know yet that we're going to be writing every single day, and it's no big deal, and like she can finish tomorrow. So yeah, so those were our day one ones. Again, like they don't look like a huge deal, but that's okay. Like already they've made progress like just from 2 days. So today my lesson was about like, so I talked about how I don't need them to write me a story about the owl in the classroom. Like it's my owl. My classroom used to be like the art teacher's room. So some kids like painted on some of the ceiling tiles. So there's an owl ceiling tile and a Pikachu ceiling tile. So I'm like, I don't really need to know like a story about the owl ceiling tile. Like it's my classroom. Like I already know that. I want to know something special about you, like something that you did, something that only you can tell me. And then I modeled writing a story about something I did on the weekend. So one thing we did on the weekend is where I live, the Team Canada Women's Selection Camp was happening. So it's called like the Fall Festival. All the women trying out for Team Canada came and like they played scrimmage games against each other and like against some of the junior A teams in the area. So we brought Leah to her first like competitive hockey game that wasn't just watching me play. So I wrote my story about like me and Leah watching the girls playing on the ice. And like, I was like, oh, it's at the rink, and everybody knew about the rink, and like, it was like a big deal. And I was like, so I want to know something like about you and something that you did. And then I added, so I put an L for Leah, and then I put like M for Madame, and then I like talked about our hair color, yada, yada, yada. And then at the end, I wrote a sentence this time. So I was like, I would just like to tell you that like I'm watching the game with Leah. So I was like, je regarde, I think I said je regarde le hockey or something like that. So like I just like stretched out the sounds, and like if my students knew what the sound was, I wrote it down. Like if they said the wrong letter, I wrote it down. Like I just want them to know, like, the words are what brings the message. So like we're just gonna give it a try. So like they actually knew. So when the whole class is pitching in, they knew many sounds. Like I was really impressed. Like I had like je was actually written. I put like a space. Usually nobody asks me about that, but today they were actually like, why did you spread them out? Like they were really like, I've never had a group ask me why I put spaces in between words, but they were just like, why are they all like separate like that? And I was like, oh, cool. Like that just means it's a new word. Like we put a space in between our words so it's easier to read. Like that's all I said. Like we moved on. And then like for regard, I think we heard like R and we heard D. For le, it was written like with both sounds. And then for hockey, I was actually like shocked that they heard like the H, but someone was like H. So I put an H. I was like, okay. And then for the K sound, one student said Q and one student said K. And I was like, you know what? We'll just put both. I was like, we'll put both there. I'm not sure which one it is. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be perfect. Like we'll put them both. And then like for E, like the EY, they said like the letter I, because I have an E in my class. So they knew that like E is how you make E in. So like it was great. And I put a period at the end and like we were done. It was just quick. And I was just like, just wanted to see who was going to take that information and go with it. And I got a lot better stories today. So like this one, this weekend was open farm weekend also in my neighborhood. So like a lot of kids went to the farms and saw the animals. I'm going to actually write about that tomorrow. That would have been even better than the hockey idea, but I forgot that we took Leah to open farm. So this student whose name is Van, he didn't write Van, like that's actually his name. He drew him like at the farm, like here's the mud, that's the pig, Tinkerbell, that he went to see, like there he is. So he told me the story about him going to open farm day. Did he write all the words? No, but that's okay. Like orally, he can tell me the story of what he did on the weekend. Like that's a huge start. So when his brain is ready and he learns more letter sounds, and when I show him day after day after day how to write a sentence, when his brain is ready, he's just going to do it on his own. Like he knows the process. He'll be good to go. This student does not know any French, has no idea what I'm talking about ever. And he was like, I just draw a picture, and I was like, draw me a story. And I don't know what it is. So he's going to be like at the bottom end of my like continuum or whatever. I'm going to just work on him being able to draw a story. Like we're not going to talk about letter sounds. We're not going to talk about any of that. Like my idea is just going to, or my goal for him right now is just going to be getting, like pulling an idea out of his brain, like getting him to tell me something about his family or about his brother, or like this is the exact same thing that he drew both days in a row, just like shapes. So we're going to go from there. This is my guy that drew the igloo and the dinosaur yesterday. So you can see like now he has a story. He drew, this might have been open farm day too. I don't remember. But anyway, like it's a story, and he doesn't know very many letters or sounds, but he knows like some symbols. So he added these symbols in, and as he was writing them down, he was telling his story. So like he's got the process, he was saying the words, and he was just writing kind of whatever symbols that he thought might represent that. That's great. Like it's symbolic. It's perfect. This little sweetheart, I think I have a unicorn class this year. Like, I don't know. I've never had students ask me about spaces, and I've never had students like label their pictures on day 2. But anyway, she drew a picture. It's like cat, and she was like, C is for cat. And I was like, yeah, it is. And she's like, B is for bathtub. It's like, yeah, you're right. Like it definitely is. And then there's S for somebody, but I can't remember who. Or maybe it's an R for her sister Rosie. Anyway, she drew that, and she like had this whole story about how the cat swing aside in the mud and had to like go upstairs and take a bath, and then it fell down the stairs. Like she had this whole like big story. I'm not exactly sure if it happened to her real cat, but it's a story. Like we'll get there. We'll get her talking about me. She wrote her name, and I forget why she wrote the letter H. But anyway, like so that was huge. Like I only showed them labeling pictures one time. Her brain is ready. It's in English, yes, but like that's okay. Like she's gonna. If you're in grade 2 though, and they speak French, like I would definitely encourage them to label in French. But like she's gonna like B is also for like ben in French, so like that's cool. Chat, like C is also for chat, so like it's gonna be fun. So yeah, so my next step for her is just gonna kind of like, she does know quite a few French words, so I'm gonna just be like, think about that sound in French and like see what you can label in French. So that was exciting. Like I don't usually have that happen. This one, she had a story about going shopping with her mom, so like that was cool. It's not something that I knew that she had done on the weekend. You can tell she's thinking too, like she thinking like who's taller. Oh, actually, you know what? I lied to you. Sorry, this is her and this is her little sister. Her little sister has glasses, so she gave her glasses. My student, she's taller, so like she's taller in the picture. They're shopping, so they have the cart. Like she, like already after just 2 days of me showing like what I'm thinking about when I'm writing and drawing, like they're thinking about the same kinds of things in their pictures. This little girl drew her and her mom. So her mom, I was actually sitting next to her as we were working, so like she didn't label until she was like, I'm all done. And I was like, well, like who are these people? Like how can you let me know who they are? So her name starts with G, and then this is her mom, and I thought she was gonna say like M, but she's like, no, her name is Katie, and it's like with a K. That's cool. Like write your K. This one, so this little guy, I was also at his table. So right now when they're writing, I pick it, so like I'm still modeling what I'm doing as they're practicing. So like I pick a table and I sit with them. Side note, my students can work anywhere in the room. Like they can work on the floor, they can work, I have some flexible seating, whatever. They can work anywhere as long as they're focused. But this table had the most kids, so I sat there. So he also was like, I'm done, I drew on both sides, I want to write another story, but like I don't have any more paper. And we only write on one paper per day because otherwise they waste a lot of paper. So I was just like, well, who's that? And he was like, that's my dog, Maple. And I was like, well, let's like think about the sounds in the word. So I didn't tell him any letters. I just said the dog's name really, so like, and he wrote an M, and I was like, meh, a, and like he speaks English at home, so he wrote an A, and then like obviously he didn't get the E because you can't really hear that, but like that was huge too, the fact that he already knows that many sounds. That's not normal. Like generally, I generally don't have students labeling. I generally don't have students who can spell their whole dog's name. This is like I think it's a unicorn class. Like I don't know, maybe this is going to be the best year of my career. We'll see, at least for writing. This little girl drew LOL dolls, so it's hard to see, but she obviously has LOL toys, like those weird little doll things, and she remembers how to write LOL, so she wrote LOL on her picture. Symbolic. Perfect. This guy also had a cat, a story about a cat who, yeah, that it's a cat. Like I know that's kind of questionable, but he swears it's a picture of this cat. And his cat's name is Felix, and he was at the same table, and I was just kind of like, Felix. He did not know what letter makes the sound. We didn't do it yet. Like that's totally fine. He knew the L because we've already done L, and then like X is like pretty much the same in English, so he knew X, and like that's what he wrote. That's perfect. Like it's fantastic. I know that it says Felix. He knows it says Felix. It just helps his brain when he's telling the story to his friend. Like he remembers it's about his cat Felix. It's all good. And then this is my last one. So he drew him and his sister on their scooters, picking flowers, I guess, or maybe balloons. I'm not entirely sure. I was not at his table, so I didn't. And I missed his share. So anyway, so yeah, like that's just day 2. So you can already see like huge progress from almost everybody in just 2 days. Like just 2 days of me talking about what I'm doing and how I'm thinking when I'm writing. Like they start to think and internalize, and like whatever their brains are ready for, their brains are going to think about it and they're going to do it on their paper. So if they're ready for adding labels, like she added labels. If they're ready for stretching out sounds, like they can stretch out some sounds. If they're not ready and they're still just drawing shapes, for now they're just going to draw shapes. If they're copying from the environment, they're copying from the environment. Like it's all fine. Like I don't know if you guys have, like my school, we're given a continuum, and I don't have a digital copy of it, but I can like take a picture of it tomorrow. So like on the continuum, it's really easy for me to see that like no student is like not doing the right thing. Like they all fall on the continuum somewhere, and I can like move them to the next step. So I find that really helpful for me. Like I know like, okay, so this student's just drawing shapes. Like the next step is to get him to like think of a story to tell. And if he can tell a story orally, then he'll be able to like draw it and write it. If somebody's like adding labels, the next step is for them to bring the labels like down and like write a sentence. If somebody can stretch out sounds, like they, you know, like it really helps me know where my students are at and like what the next step is for them. So obviously tomorrow I'm not going to do a lesson on like putting spaces in words because nobody's writing sentences. Like that's totally fine. So tomorrow I think I'm going to talk. So we did the 3 steps of writing, and then today I talked about how I wanted to be a story actually with their life. So I'll do like a reminder, like remember yesterday when I told you this, and then we're probably going to do working like volume level, because today I found our volume level was pretty loud. So we'll talk about how it's really hard to like write your story well if everybody around you is making a lot of noise. Like it's really hard to focus, it's really hard to concentrate. So tomorrow I'll add in, like I'll put on some quiet music, and then we'll talk about like not talking, and on tomorrow I'll introduce like, okay, so if you are talking to your friend and you forget, I'm just gonna move you to a spot where it'll be easier for you to remember, like stay focused on your work. And then like probably the next day we'll talk. So I meant to start with this like earlier, but I forgot to talk about it. So our stamina is also something we work on every day. So Monday I have like a stamina chart, and you're actually gonna get it because I use a stamina chart for centers as well. So next month in the membership, I forget if it's module 1 or module 2. I think it's module 2. I don't know. In module 1 or module 2, you're going to get a stamina chart to chart your center time to like work on their stamina there. I use the same one for writing. So like we started with 5 minutes today. I put 7 on the clock, and then at 7 minutes, like nobody was, like everyone was still on task. So I asked them if they wanted some more time, and I added 4 more minutes. So we actually did like 11 minutes today. So I'll color in 11 minutes on our stamina chart for today. I'll color in whatever it is tomorrow. And then Friday, maybe Monday, like it depends kind of how we're going. I'll show them the chart, and I'll be like, look how much your muscles grew. And like we're trying to get to 20. So what I want is my students to get to 20 minutes like of independent writing, because then once they get there for a solid amount of time, after Christmas usually I'll pull a small group of writing, like while the rest of them are writing on their own. So I never spell words for my students. I never they don't come to me and say, how do I spell this word, because they know that I'm going to say, what sounds do you hear? So like right from the get-go, I'm not telling them any letters. Like I'm just saying, what sounds do you hear? 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 And then throughout the year, like once I'm done all the behavioral mini lessons, like working the whole time, staying on task, staying in one spot, choosing a smart spot to work, starting with a pencil, choosing colors that make sense. Like once I'm done with all of the kind of like procedural mini lessons, I'll move into mini lessons of like, what do you do if you don't know how to write a word? So I'll show them, they have in their writing folders. I don't think I showed them. I think I had an Instagram story on it, which you can probably see if you go back to my Instagram and look in the classroom highlights thing. I think I saved it there. So in the writing folders, they have an alphabet, and they have like an alphabet linking chart, I mean. So it's like basically the same as my alphabet posters, but smaller. So like A has an avion, B has a bateau, like it's all the same as my posters. So if they are trying, like, so I'll show them like, okay, so if you want to write the word like mama, like and then they go through the alphabet, and then when they get to M, they're like like mouton, mama, like it's just, it kind of helps them maybe know if it's the right letter or not. They also have their personal word wall in there, which is a free download on my TPT store. So I'll show them how to use that. All of their friends' names are in their personal word wall. Other words that I might add would be like a place, like if they're going to Halifax, I don't expect them to know how to write Halifax on their own, or like Toronto, even something like Disneyland or Disney World, because like it's like, if it's a name of a place, I'll write it in. If it's a name of a person, I'll write it in. Or if it's like a crazy word with like full of sounds that we haven't learned yet, like maybe like helicopter or something like that, I might write it in for them. But generally, they use their personal word wall for their friends' names and like their family members' names. Or if later, like much later in the year when we've learned about sight words, if there's like some kids learn sight words faster than others. So if I have a kid who knows a sight word that's not on our big word wall yet, I would put that sight word in their little word wall. Or something like chat or chien, because they start with sh, and we don't talk about that sound for a long time. And I can draw a little picture of a chat or a chien beside it so that they know. So with the personal word wall, the main goal is that they can recognize all the words. It makes no sense to give them a personal word wall full of words that they can't read, because that's their idea. So yeah, so in there, so like I'll do a lesson on using their alphabet, I'll do a lesson on using their personal word wall, I'll do a lesson on using like the big word wall. Right now we only have our friends' names in the big word wall, but like probably by like a month from now, 3 or 4 weeks from now, I'll start adding other sight words to our word wall, so I'll show them like how you walk to the word wall, you pick the word you need, you write it down, you walk it back to the word wall, you stick it in the right box so someone else can use it. Like there's like hundreds of silly little lessons that you might think would be obvious. They're not obvious. So yeah, so we'll do that. And then after I show them like how to spell a word using those resources, then we'll talk about like stretching out sounds, like thinking with the beginning sound, like what sounds do you hear? What do you do if you don't know the sound? That kind of thing. Then later, like once we've gone through all of that, we'll talk about like spacing. We'll talk about starting with a capital letter. We'll talk about ending with punctuation. We'll talk about different kinds of punctuation. Yeah, so, and then later, like once we've got that down and everyone's like good at doing personal narratives, and I might move into another kind, like we might write little books, like where we're trying to stretch the same story over a few pages. So we'll have like a first page to like talk about the character and the place. Then we'll like share 3 ideas or 3 things that happen, and then we'll end with like the heart of the story and how everybody's feeling. We'll do like informational texts later in the year. Also, we might do like démarche à suivre, so like this is how you make a snowman. Like it really depends on my group. I don't have currently, I think they're changing that, but I don't currently have like texte à l'étude for maternelle. So I don't have to like follow specific ones. So like I just kind of do what my students are interested in. And if I try one and it really doesn't work and they really don't like it, then like we let it go and we move on. But I like to show them a variety of texts, but we start with personal narratives because that's like what they can relate to best. So I hope that was kind of clear. I didn't really do a good outline to like keep me on track. So I might have got a little rambly and I might have forgot a few things. But if like next month I'll come back and I'll show you kind of where my kids have gotten in the month of just me like showing them. And I really like, I keep meaning to type up all of my mini lessons and packaging them up, sticking them on TPT like kind of month by month. But I just have like, I'm busy. I keep adding things to my plate and like I can't add more hours to my day. But anyway, like I am going to do it once I get, like my students need the math units the most. So like that's my number 1 priority right now are the math units because my students really need them. Like I don't have them all ready for them themselves. The writing like is easier for me to kind of do as we go and I adjust to my students' needs, but the math I find like I need more the long range plan. So anyway, if you have any questions, pop them in. If you teach an older grade, of course, you probably have less flexibility. Like I love maternelle because I find it really flexible and we're all starting from nothing and like we just go. But when I taught Première Année, I started the year in the exact same way. Like I started with personal narratives. I started by modeling a story. A lot of them looked, you know, like this in the beginning of Première Année. So if your kids look like that with their writing on the first day, like that's normal. But I found they moved faster. Like when I taught Première Année, we got through it. Like they were writing for real, like much quicker than in maternelle. So if your students are like not writing for real for a long time in maternelle, like that's normal. But by the end of the year, I do find like many of them do a great job, and like by the end of the year, all of them generally can like please tell me the story. And like it's again, like it's us as teachers, we need to remember like you can tell a great story without a lot of words. Like look at the David books, like how many words are on those pages? They're like no David, they pass out, like it's like 3 words per page, and the stories are hilarious and really engaging, and the pictures really tell the story. So what we want for our students in maternelle especially is that they're just communicating their idea wherever their brains are ready. Yeah, so if they can like orally say their story when they show it to you, like that's a huge step. If they look at you and they say je ne sais pas and like they have no story to tell, like that's when we want to really like intervene like quickly there, more so than if they're not writing like words and letters yet. In the beginning, like the big goal is that they can tell you their story orally. We're going to work on getting it on paper because writing is just telling on paper. But if they don't have a story to tell, like that's when you're kind of like, uh-oh, like we need to really work on this. So like my student who's just drawing like circles and rectangles, like we're going to work on that to get him like writing about his family or writing about things that he likes to do. Like I know he has a baby brother. There's actually 5 boys in that family, and I've taught 3 of them now. So like I know a lot about their family. So we're gonna like this week I'm gonna be working at his table and like really pushing him to think about something that he can share with me. So yeah, I don't see any questions. If you have any, pop them in. Otherwise, I will be back next month. This week there was no new stuff in your Club de Premiere, but like Sunday, I'm just looking at my calendar to see what the date is. I think the 22nd. Does that make sense? Yes. So on the 22nd, you'll have your next like virtual box of resources coming to you. The first week is about centers. Like the first 3 weeks actually are about centers. I kind of lied. I think at one point I said I was going to talk about rhymes, but I ran out of time. Like I had too much to say about centers. And then I talk about lecture guide en grand group and like how we start with lecture guide in my whole group. So we're going to talk about rhymes actually in November instead of in October. I'm sorry. I just ran out of, I had too much to say about literacy centers. So you'll get all of that. And then on Sunday, I'll start talking about literacy centers week 1. yeah, and we'll go from there. So I don't see any questions. So thank you guys for popping in. I will post the link, like the replay on YouTube, and I will email it out probably in the morning because it takes a really long time to upload and I'm really sleepy. So probably in the morning, I will email you with the replay if you want to catch it again. If you think of any questions in the meantime, just pop them in the group and I will answer them. Sometimes Facebook isn't telling me when you post, so I'm trying to remember to like come back in the group and look. So if you don't hear from me, like tag me again. All right, I hope you're having a great week and I will see you soon.